8 years after my parents sold our family home and left me with nowhere to go. My mother, Sarah, stood on my doorstep with mascara streaking down her cheeks like black rivers of desperation. Her hair hung limp and unwashed, her clothes wrinkled from sleeping in her car for who knows how many nights. She was begging me to help her because my father, David, had just abandoned her in Arizona after draining their travel savings on some 25-year-old travel blogger named Crystal. The irony hit me like a freight train as she stood there pleading outside my luxury apartment building, the same woman who had made me homeless on my 20th birthday. So she and Dad could chase their selfish retirement dreams across Europe and Asia. I will never forget my 20th birthday. Instead of cake and celebration, my parents gathered me in our living room for what they called an important family meeting. The house felt different that day, though I could not pinpoint why. Family photos had been taken down from the mantel and several boxes sat stacked in the corner that I had assumed were donations for charity. Sarah cleared her throat nervously while David sat forward in his recliner, with that serious expression he used when discussing finances. They exchanged glances before Sarah began speaking in a voice that tried to sound cheerful, but came out forced and artificial. Quincy, honey, your father and I have made an exciting decision about our future, she said, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. We have decided to sell the house and use the money to travel the world while we are still young enough to enjoy it. The words hit me like cold water. I stared at them both, waiting for the punchline or the explanation of how this affected our family. David leaned back and crossed his arms, his tone matter-of-fact and businesslike. We have already signed the papers with a buyer, he continued. The closing is set for next month, which gives you 30 days to find your own place and get on your feet. We think this will be good for you, son. Time to cut the cord and learn some real independence. My mind reeled as the reality sank in. They had sold our home without consulting me, without warning me, without considering that I had nowhere to go. I worked part-time at Garcia Automotive, earning $12 an hour while saving every penny for community college tuition. My savings account held exactly $847, nowhere near enough for rent deposits, utility connections, and moving expenses. But where am I supposed to live? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah reached over and patted my knee with a condescending smile. Oh, sweetie, you will figure it out. Young people are so resourceful these days. Maybe you can stay with friends for a while or find a nice roommate situation. This is exactly the kind of challenge that will help you grow into a responsible adult. David nodded approvingly. When I was your age, my father gave me $50 and told me to make my own way in the world. Best thing that ever happened to me. Made me tough. Made me appreciate what I earned. I wanted to scream that times had changed, that $50 in 1972 went a lot further than $800 in 2015. But the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I asked about their travel plans, hoping to understand their timeline and maybe negotiate a few more months. We have already purchased a beautiful recreational vehicle, Sarah said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. 32 feet long with all the amenities. We plan to spend 6 months touring the national parks, then take a cruise to Europe and explore the Mediterranean. After that, maybe Asia or South America. We have been researching for months and found the most wonderful travel groups for people our age. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. They had been planning this elaborate escape for months while I worked double shifts at the garage, believing I was contributing to our household and saving for my education. Every family dinner, every casual conversation about my future, every moment they had acted like concerned parents had been a lie. They were simply waiting for me to turn 20 so they could legally abandon me without facing accusations of child neglect. I called my girlfriend Jessica that evening, hoping she might offer some temporary solution. We had been dating for 8 months, and her family seemed to like me well enough. Jessica listened sympathetically as I explained the situation, promising to talk to her parents about letting me stay in their guest room for a few weeks. The conversation with her parents went exactly as I feared. Jessica called me back the next morning with disappointment heavy in her voice. "My dad says it would be too complicated having you here long term," she explained. "He is worried about liability issues and thinks it might be inappropriate since we are dating. He suggested maybe you could look into those extended stay hotels or find a room to rent somewhere." Extended stay hotels cost more per week than I made in 10 days at the garage. Room rentals required first and last month payments, plus security deposits that totaled more money than I possessed. I spent the next 2 weeks calling every friend from high school, discovering that most were away at college or living with their own families, who had no space for an additional person. My friend Tyler offered his couch for a few nights here and there, but his mother made it clear this could only be temporary. She worked 2 jobs to support Tyler and his younger sister, and another mouth to feed was simply impossible. As the closing date approached, I watched my parents pack their belongings with giddy excitement. They sorted through photo albums, deciding which memories were worth carrying in their new mobile lifestyle. They researched campgrounds and travel routes with the enthusiasm of teenagers planning summer vacation. Meanwhile, I quietly gathered my possessions into 2 duffel bags and a cardboard box, representing everything I owned in the world. The morning they handed over the house keys, Sarah hugged me goodbye, as if I were leaving for college instead of facing homelessness. David shook my hand firmly and reminded me that this experience would build character. They drove away in their shiny recreational vehicle without looking back, leaving me standing in the driveway of a house that no longer belonged to any of us. Living out of my beat-up Honda Civic taught me lessons no classroom could provide. The car had over 200,000 miles on it, a cracked windshield, and a heater that worked sporadically during the increasingly cold October nights. I quickly learned which 24-hour establishments allowed people to use their restrooms without purchasing anything, which parking lots provided relative safety for overnight sleeping, and how to maintain personal hygiene using public facilities. Tyler let me crash on his couch twice a week when his mother worked night shifts at the hospital. Those nights felt like luxury compared to sleeping in my car, but I could sense the strain my presence put on their household. Tyler's younger sister Madison asked innocent questions about why I did not live with my parents anymore, forcing Tyler to create elaborate explanations that protected my dignity while satisfying her curiosity. The Garcia Automotive Shop became my second home. Marcus Garcia had hired me 6 months earlier based on my willingness to learn and natural mechanical aptitude. The work was physically demanding but satisfying, and Marcus treated his employees fairly. I arrived early every morning and stayed late every evening, partially because I genuinely enjoyed working on engines, and partially because the shop provided warmth, purpose, and distraction from my living situation. As November arrived with freezing temperatures and early snowfall, sleeping in my car became dangerous. Several nights I woke up shivering uncontrollably, unable to feel my fingers or toes, despite wearing every piece of clothing I owned. I started sneaking into the shop after closing time, using my key to disable the alarm system, and sleeping on the floor near the space heaters Marcus used to keep the garage comfortable during winter months. The arrangement worked perfectly for 3 weeks. I made sure to leave before Marcus arrived each morning, carefully resetting the alarm and ensuring everything appeared exactly as we had left it the previous evening. I used the shop's bathroom to wash up and brush my teeth, and kept my sleeping bag hidden behind stacks of spare tires, where it would not be discovered during normal business hours. Everything unraveled on a Tuesday morning in late November when Marcus arrived 2 hours early to meet a parts delivery truck that had rescheduled their route. I was standing at the bathroom sink in my underwear, washing my hair with hand soap, when I heard his key in the front door lock. Panic flooded my system as I realized there was nowhere to hide, and no reasonable explanation for my presence. Marcus found me half-dressed and dripping wet, my sleeping bag, and personal belongings scattered around the space heater where I had spent the night. His face cycled through confusion, realization, and disappointment before settling into grim determination. Quincy, what the hell is going on here? He demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and concern. I tried to explain my situation quickly, emphasizing how grateful I was for the job and promising that my personal problems would never interfere with my work performance again. I begged him to let me figure out another solution, swearing that I would find somewhere else to stay within a few days. Marcus listened silently, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. When I finished talking, he shook his head slowly and walked to his office. I cannot have employees living in my shop, he said firmly. The insurance company would cancel my policy if they found out, and I could lose everything I have built here. You put me in an impossible position, and I cannot trust that this will not happen again. He returned with my final paycheck and a cardboard box for my tools. Despite my pleas and promises, Marcus remained firm. He wished me luck finding another job, but said he had to protect his business first. The conversation lasted less than 10 minutes, ending 8 months of employment that had provided structure, income, and hope for building a career in automotive repair. Jessica broke up with me that same afternoon via text message. She had been growing distant for weeks, our conversations becoming shorter and less frequent as my situation became more desperate and depressing. Her final message was brief and clinical. I care about you, but cannot handle all this drama anymore. I need to focus on school and my own future. I hope you understand. I understood perfectly. Dating someone who lived in their car and had just lost their job was not the kind of relationship any rational person would want to maintain. Jessica had her own goals and challenges, and supporting a homeless boyfriend was not part of her life plan. That night, I parked outside Denny's restaurant and tried to assess my options. I had $312 from my final paycheck, a car that burned oil and needed new tires, and no immediate prospects for employment. The overnight manager at Denny's eventually asked me to move along after I had been sitting in their parking lot for 4 hours, nursing a single cup of coffee while trying to stay warm. I drove to a truck stop outside town and parked among the 18-wheelers, hoping their presence would provide some security and anonymity. The bathroom stayed open all night, giving me access to running water and a place to clean up before job interviews. I applied for positions at every retail store, restaurant, and service business within a 15-mile radius. But most employers wanted permanent addresses and reliable transportation. The irony was not lost on me that my parents were probably sleeping in comfortable RV parks with full hookups for electricity and water while I was rationing toothpaste and counting quarters for gas money. I wondered if they thought about me at all during their adventure, or if I had simply been erased from their minds, like an inconvenient detail from their past. December brought the kind of bitter cold that made living in a car nearly impossible. My Honda's heater finally gave up completely, leaving me dependent on blankets and body heat for warmth during the endless winter nights. I survived on dollar menu items from fast food restaurants and day-old bread from grocery store clearance sections, carefully stretching every dollar while searching for steady employment. A temporary labor agency called Ready Workers became my lifeline. They placed people in short-term construction and warehouse jobs that paid cash at the end of each day. The work was physically brutal, and the hours inconsistent, but it provided enough money to buy food and gas while I continued searching for permanent employment. On a particularly cold Thursday morning, Ready Workers sent me to a construction site where Austin Development was building a new apartment complex on the south side of town. The project manager assigned me to a cleanup crew tasked with removing debris and preparing areas for the next phase of construction. The work was mindless and backbreaking, but being around skilled tradesmen reminded me of the satisfaction I had found working at Garcia Automotive. Austin Blackwell, the owner of Austin Development, arrived at the job site around noon to inspect progress and discuss scheduling with his foreman. He was a man in his early 50s with calloused hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. While walking through the construction area, he paused to examine electrical work being installed in one of the apartment units. I was carrying a load of broken drywall to the dumpster when I noticed something that made me stop in my tracks. One of the electrical outlets had been installed upside down with the ground plug at the top instead of the bottom. More concerning, the wire nuts connecting the circuits looked loose, and I could see exposed copper where the electrical tape had not been properly applied. Safety protocols from my automotive training kicked in immediately. Exposed wiring in a residential building could cause fires, electrical shocks, or even fatalities once tenants moved in. I knew I was just temporary labor with no authority to question the work of licensed electricians, but my conscience would not let me walk away from a potentially dangerous situation. I approached Austin, hesitantly removing my work gloves and preparing to explain what I had observed. He looked up from his clipboard with mild irritation, clearly busy with more important matters than concerns from day laborers. "Mr. Blackwell, sir, I noticed something in Unit 12 that might be a safety issue." I began, trying to keep my voice respectful but confident. "The electrical outlets look like they might not be installed correctly, and some of the wire connections appear loose." Austin raised an eyebrow skeptically, but followed me back to the unit in question. I pointed out the upside-down outlet and carefully explained how the loose wire nuts could create arcing and potential fire hazards once the electrical system was energized. I also noted that the outlet boxes seemed to be mounted too shallow in the wall, which could cause problems when faceplates were installed. Austin examined the electrical work carefully, his expression growing more serious as he confirmed each issue I had identified. He called over his electrical contractor and had a tense conversation about quality control and safety standards. The electrician initially tried to dismiss the problems as minor, but Austin insisted that all the work in that unit be redone immediately. After the electrician walked away to gather his crew, Austin turned back to me with newfound interest. "What is your background, son? That was good catch that probably saved me thousands in insurance claims and potential lawsuits." I explained my automotive repair experience and how engine electrical systems had taught me to recognize proper wiring techniques and safety protocols. Austin listened intently, asking questions about my work history, education, and current situation. When I mentioned being between permanent jobs, he offered to buy me lunch at a nearby diner to continue our conversation. Over coffee and sandwiches, I found myself telling Austin the entire story of my parents' abandonment and my struggle to find stable housing and employment. He listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but never making me feel like a charity case or object of pity. "I was 18 when my parents kicked me out," Austin said quietly after I finished talking. "Told me I was on my own, and they did not owe me anything beyond the legal minimum. Spent 2 years sleeping in my truck and working construction for cash money, just like you are doing now." He went on to explain how he had built his construction business from nothing, starting with small repair jobs and gradually taking on larger projects as his reputation grew. 28 years later, Austin Development employed 43 people and handled multi-million-dollar commercial and residential projects throughout the region. The difference between successful people and everyone else is not intelligence or education or family connections, Austin said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "It is the willingness to keep working when everything seems hopeless, and the ability to see opportunities where other people only see problems." Austin offered me a position as live-in maintenance supervisor for one of his apartment complexes. The job included a one-bedroom unit rent-free plus a salary that was nearly double what I had earned at Garcia Automotive. In addition, he would pay for me to attend night classes in construction management at the local community college. The offer seemed too good to be true, and Austin explained the conditions that came with this opportunity. I would be on call 24 hours a day for emergency maintenance issues. I had to maintain perfect attendance at work and school, with no exceptions for illness or personal problems. Most importantly, I had to stay completely sober and drug-free with random testing to ensure compliance. "I am not running a charity," Austin said firmly. "I am making an investment in someone who showed good judgment and took initiative today. But if you let me down or take advantage of my trust, you will be out immediately with no second chances." I accepted his offer without hesitation, knowing this was probably my only chance to escape homelessness and build a real future. Austin drove me to Meadowbrook Apartments that afternoon and showed me Unit 24, a small but clean one-bedroom apartment with basic furniture and a kitchenette. After 3 months of sleeping in my car, having a warm bed and private bathroom felt like winning the lottery. That evening, as I unpacked my few belongings in my new home, I thought about my parents, probably enjoying dinner at some expensive restaurant in their recreational vehicle. They had chosen their adventure over their responsibility to me, but their abandonment had forced me to develop strength and resourcefulness I never knew I possessed. For the first time since my 20th birthday, I felt genuine hope about my future. 2 years of working for Austin and attending night school transformed every aspect of my life. The maintenance supervisor position taught me plumbing, electrical work, HVAC repair, and property management skills that expanded far beyond my automotive background. Austin proved to be a demanding but fair employer who rewarded hard work with increased responsibility and regular pay raises. Community college classes in construction management challenged me academically, while providing the theoretical foundation for skills I was learning through hands-on experience. My grades were excellent, partially because I had genuine interest in the material, and partially because I knew Austin was monitoring my progress closely. Failure was not an option when someone had invested so much in my success. I met Emma Patterson in my business mathematics class during my second semester. She was 26 years old, a registered nurse working toward her bachelor's degree in nursing administration. Emma had grown up in a stable, loving family, and initially found my story of parental abandonment almost impossible to believe. Her parents, Robert and Linda Patterson, owned a small accounting firm and had sacrificed significantly to support Emma's education and career goals. Emma and I studied together regularly, our friendship gradually developing into something deeper as we discovered shared values about work ethic, personal responsibility, and building meaningful careers. She was impressed by my determination to succeed, despite difficult circumstances, while I admired her compassion for others and her commitment to helping people through healthcare. Our relationship progressed slowly and carefully. Emma understood that my past experiences had made me cautious about trusting people completely, while I recognized that her family stability gave her confidence and security I was still developing within myself. We balanced each other well, with Emma encouraging me to believe in my own worth, while I helped her understand that some people overcome tremendous obstacles to achieve their goals. Austin promoted me to assistant project manager after 18 months, recognizing my ability to coordinate maintenance crews and manage multiple priorities simultaneously. The position came with another significant salary increase and the opportunity to work directly with contractors, suppliers, and tenants on larger improvement projects. I started a small weekend handyman business called Quincy's Fix-It Services, handling minor repairs and improvements for tenants and property owners throughout the area. Austin encouraged this entrepreneurial venture as long as it did not interfere with my primary responsibilities. The additional income allowed me to save money consistently for the first time in my life and purchase a reliable used truck for my business equipment. Emma and I had been dating for 8 months when she showed me something that reignited all the anger and pain I thought I had processed. She was scrolling through Facebook on her phone during lunch when she paused at a post that made her gasp with surprise. "Quincy, is this your mother?" she asked, turning her phone toward me. The image showed my parents at an upscale restaurant in Barcelona, smiling broadly as they raised glasses of expensive wine in a toast. Sarah wore jewelry I had never seen before, while David sported a tan and expensive-looking shirt. The caption read, "Living our best life in Spain. Thank you to our wonderful travel group for recommending this amazing restaurant. Every day is an adventure when you follow your dreams." Emma helped me search for more posts, discovering dozens of photos documenting their lavish travels across Europe. Luxury hotels, gourmet meals, guided tours of famous landmarks, and shopping excursions in high-end boutiques. Each photo showed them looking relaxed and happy without a care in the world, or any indication that they had a son who might be struggling back home. The comments on their posts were even more infuriating. Family, friends, and distant relatives praised their courage to pursue their dreams and their wisdom in enjoying life while they were still healthy. People called them inspirational and said they were living proof that it is never too late to follow your heart. "My God, Quincy," Emma said softly, scrolling through months of posts. "They have been living like millionaires while you were homeless and working multiple jobs just to survive." What hurt most was realizing they had never tried to contact me even once during their travels. No phone calls to check on my welfare, no messages asking if I was safe or successful, no attempts to share their experiences with the son they had raised for 20 years. I had been completely erased from their lives the moment their recreational vehicle left our driveway. Emma held my hand as I processed the emotions flooding through me. Rage at their selfishness, sadness about their complete indifference to my welfare, and surprisingly pride in how much I had accomplished despite their abandonment. The young man sleeping in his car 2 years ago had become someone building a real career and meaningful relationships through his own efforts. "They do not deserve to know the amazing person you have become," Emma said firmly. "You did not just survive what they did to you. You thrived in spite of them." That evening, I made a conscious decision to block my parents on all social media platforms and focus completely on building my own future. Their choices had shaped my circumstances, but would not define my character or limit my potential. I had Austin's mentorship, Emma's love, a growing business, and skills that would provide security for the rest of my life. Several family members attempted to contact me over the following months, forwarding messages from my parents or sharing updates about their continuing travels. I politely but firmly told these relatives that I was no longer interested in maintaining any connection with people who had abandoned me when I needed them most. If Sarah and David wanted to restore our relationship, they would need to make that effort directly and demonstrate genuine remorse for their actions. No such effort was ever made. They continued posting photos from exotic locations, spending money on luxurious experiences, while remaining completely indifferent to the son whose childhood home they had sold to fund their selfish adventure. Their silence spoke volumes about their priorities and their complete lack of parental instinct or basic human decency. 5 years after sleeping in my car outside truck stops, I walked into Austin's office carrying paperwork that represented everything I had worked towards since he first offered me a chance at Meadowbrook Apartments. My construction management degree hung framed on my apartment wall. My weekend handyman business had grown to require 2 part-time employees, and Austin had just offered me a junior partnership in Austin development. The partnership agreement included equity ownership in the company profit-sharing arrangements and decision-making authority over day-to-day operations. Austin was planning to reduce his direct involvement in routine management while maintaining oversight of major strategic decisions. After 7 years of building the company from a one-man operation into a regional leader, he wanted to enjoy semi-retirement while ensuring Austin development continued growing under competent leadership. "You have earned this opportunity through consistent performance and sound judgment," Austin explained as he reviewed the contract terms with me. "I am not giving you anything. You have demonstrated the skills and character necessary to be my business partner. And this arrangement benefits both of us." The financial terms were more generous than I had dared to imagine. My base salary would increase by 60% with additional compensation tied to company profits and project completion bonuses. More importantly, the partnership provided long-term security and the foundation for building significant personal wealth through property development and construction projects. Emma and I celebrated that evening at the same diner where Austin had first offered me the maintenance position at Meadowbrook Apartments. So much had changed since that desperate December afternoon when I thought my life was effectively over. Emma had completed her nursing degree and accepted a position at Regional Medical Center's Cardiac Intensive Care Unit. We were discussing marriage plans and looking at houses we could afford together on our combined salaries. The same week I signed the partnership agreement, my phone buzzed with a Facebook friend request notification. Sarah Peterson had sent a request to connect along with a message that appeared when I opened the app. Quincy, honey, I know it has been a long time since we talked, but your father and I think about you every day. We would love to reconnect and hear about what you have been doing with your life. We miss you terribly and hope you can forgive us for being out of touch for so long. Please accept my friend request so we can start talking again. Love, Mom. The message was followed by several photos from their recent travels, including shots of beaches in Thailand, temples in Japan, and markets in Vietnam. They looked older than I remembered, but still healthy, and apparently enjoying their extended vacation from parental responsibilities. I showed the message to Emma, who read it with growing incredulence and anger. Out of touch for so long, she repeated. They act like you all just lost contact naturally instead of them deliberately abandoning you and never making any effort to check if you were alive or dead. Through mutual family connections, I learned that my parents' travel funds were running low after 5 years of international adventures. David had been making comments to relatives about reconnecting with Quincy now that he has probably learned some valuable life lessons, and seeing if our son has matured enough to appreciate what we taught him about independence. My cousin Derek called me directly with additional information that explained their sudden interest in reestablishing contact. Uncle David has been asking about you lately, Derek said carefully. He wanted to know if anyone had your address or phone number and whether you were working or had finished school. I got the impression they might be planning to come back to the States soon and were wondering if you might have space for them to stay temporarily. The audacity was breathtaking. After 5 years of complete silence, they expected to waltz back into my life and possibly impose on my hospitality while they figured out their next steps. They had spent their house-selling money on luxury travels and now needed somewhere to land when their adventure ended. I ignored their Facebook requests and messages, completely focusing instead on wedding planning with Emma and preparing for my expanded responsibilities as Austin's business partner. Emma's parents had embraced me as a future son-in-law, appreciating my work ethic and the love I showed their daughter. Robert Patterson often said I reminded him of his own father, who had built his accounting practice through determination and careful attention to client relationships. Over the following months, I received occasional updates about my parents through family members who remained in contact with them. They had shortened their travels and were making plans to return to the United States before their tourist visas expired in various countries. David had been complaining about the cost of international health insurance and the challenges of managing their finances while living overseas. Several relatives suggested I should consider reconciling with my parents before it was too late to repair our relationship. These well-meaning family members emphasized that life was short and that holding grudges was unhealthy for everyone involved. They did not understand that I was not holding a grudge so much as protecting myself from people who had demonstrated their complete willingness to prioritize their own desires over their basic responsibilities to their child. Emma supported my decision to maintain distance from people who had shown such profound selfishness and lack of parental instinct. She pointed out that my success was entirely due to my own efforts combined with the generous mentorship of someone who had no obligation to help me, but chose to invest in my potential. My parents deserved no credit for the man I had become, and accepting them back into my life without genuine accountability would only enable their continued narcissistic behavior. 8 years after my parents drove away in their recreational vehicle, I was standing in the kitchen of the house Emma and I had purchased together, preparing dinner after a long day, managing 3 concurrent construction projects for Austin development. My phone rang with a call from Derek, whose voice carried an unusual tension that immediately put me on alert. Quincy, I need to tell you something about Uncle David and Aunt Sarah. Derek began hesitantly. Something happened that you should probably know about, even though it is not really any of my business. Derek explained that he had received a frantic phone call from Sarah 3 days earlier. She was stranded at a budget motel in Phoenix, Arizona with no money and no transportation. David had cleaned out their remaining travel funds, sold their recreational vehicle without her knowledge, and disappeared with a woman named Crystal, who ran a popular travel blog on social media. She was crying so hard I could barely understand what she was saying. Derek continued. Apparently, Uncle David has been having an affair with this blogger for over a year. Crystal is 25 years old and has been documenting their travels together while making it look like she was just a friend they met along the way. The story became more shocking as Derek provided additional details he had gathered from Sarah's desperate phone calls to various family members. David had been secretly communicating with Crystal through private messages and email, planning their escape together while maintaining the pretense of a happy marriage with Sarah. Crystal specialized in luxury travel content for wealthy older men, essentially operating as a high-end escort, who documented exotic adventures with her clients. David had liquidated their remaining savings, canceled their return flights to the United States, and sold their recreational vehicle to a dealer in Nevada. He left Sarah at the motel while supposedly going to handle the vehicle sale paperwork but never returned. Sarah discovered his betrayal when she tried to access their joint bank account and found it completely empty except for a negative balance from overdraft fees. She has been calling everyone in the family begging for help, Derek said quietly. Most people either cannot afford to send money for plane tickets, or they are too angry about years of her bragging about their luxurious lifestyle. Nobody wants to enable whatever drama is happening between her and Uncle David. Derek admitted that Sarah had specifically asked him for my contact information, hoping I might be willing to help her get home, despite our estranged relationship. She had apparently learned through family gossip that I was successful and financially stable, making me her best hope for assistance in her desperate situation. I did not give her your address or phone number, Derek assured me. But she is pretty resourceful when she is desperate, and other relatives might not be as careful about protecting your privacy. I thanked Derek for the information and hung up feeling a complex mixture of emotions. Part of me felt vindicated that David's selfishness had finally caught up with him in a way that Sarah could no longer ignore or excuse. Another part of me felt genuine sadness that anyone, even someone who had hurt me so deeply, was experiencing the kind of betrayal and abandonment Sarah was facing. Emma listened to Derek's report with a combination of shock and grim satisfaction. She had never met my parents, but had formed strong opinions about them based on their treatment of me and their years of self-indulgent traveling while maintaining no contact with their son. So let me understand this correctly, Emma said, pacing around our living room as she processed the information. Your father abandoned your mother exactly the same way they abandoned you 8 years ago, except now she gets to experience how it feels to be left with nothing by someone who is supposed to love and protect you. The irony was indeed overwhelming. Sarah was now experiencing firsthand the terror, desperation, and sense of betrayal I had felt when they sold our house and drove away without caring whether I survived or thrived. She was stranded in a strange place with no resources, no support system, and no idea how to rebuild her life from nothing. I wondered if she was thinking about me during those lonely nights in the Phoenix motel, remembering the 20-year-old son she had left to figure out his own survival while she and David chased their retirement dreams. Did she finally understand the cruelty of their decision to prioritize their own happiness over their basic parental responsibilities? Emma and I discussed what we would do if Sarah actually managed to find our address and appeared at our door, seeking help. Emma felt strongly that I should not enable her bad behavior by rescuing her from natural consequences of her own choices. At the same time, Emma recognized that how I handled this situation would affect my own sense of integrity and personal values going forward. "Whatever you decide to do, I will support you completely," Emma said, taking my hands in hers. "But I want you to make this decision based on who you want to be as a person, not based on anger or revenge or what your parents deserve." 2 days later, while Emma was working a night shift at the hospital, I heard a car door slam in our driveway, followed by hesitant footsteps on our front porch. Through the window, I could see a woman with gray hair and wrinkled clothes standing uncertainly at our door, gathering courage to ring the bell. After 8 years of separation and countless unanswered questions about whether this moment would ever come, Sarah had found me. When Sarah's finger pressed our doorbell, I felt my heart rate accelerate as 8 years of suppressed emotions flooded through me simultaneously. Through the peephole, I could see her more clearly than through the window. Her hair had gone completely gray and hung limp around her face. Deep lines around her eyes spoke of stress and exhaustion that went far beyond normal aging. The designer clothes from her Facebook photos had been replaced by a wrinkled sweatshirt and jeans that looked like they had been slept in for days. I opened the door slowly, taking in the full picture of the woman who had once been my mother, but had chosen to become a stranger 8 years ago. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and her hands shook as she clutched a worn purse against her chest. "Quincy," she whispered, her voice breaking on my name. "Thank God I found you. I need help. Your father left me with nothing, and I have nowhere else to turn." The desperate vulnerability in her voice triggered a complex emotional response. Part of me wanted to slam the door immediately and let her experience the same rejection and abandonment she had inflicted on me. Another part felt unexpected compassion for any human being reduced to such obvious desperation and fear. Instead of either extreme reaction, I began laughing. Not cruel or mocking laughter, but the kind of bitter amusement that comes from recognizing perfect cosmic justice in an impossible situation. The woman who had told her 20-year-old son to figure it out and learn real independence was now begging that same son to solve her problems. "You need help," I repeated, still chuckling at the absurd irony. "That is interesting. 8 years ago, I needed help too. I needed somewhere to live when my parents sold our house to fund their vacation. I needed support while trying to finish my education and build a career. I needed parents who gave a damn whether I survived or ended up homeless." Sarah's face crumpled as my words hit their target. She tried to speak, but I continued before she could interrupt. "But you told me that being abandoned would be good for me. Remember, you said young people are resourceful and that figuring things out on my own would help me grow into a responsible adult. So tell me, Sarah, where is your resourcefulness now?" I stepped back and began closing the door, but something in her expression made me pause. Instead of the self-righteous indignation I expected, Sarah looked broken in a way that suggested genuine recognition of her failures, rather than simple self-pity about her current circumstances. "Wait," I said, reopening the door fully. "Come inside. We need to have a conversation that is 8 years overdue." Sarah followed me into the living room, her eyes taking in the comfortable furniture family photos with Emma's relatives and other evidence of the stable, successful life I had built, without any help from the people who should have been supporting me. She sat carefully on the edge of our couch, as if she was afraid of imposing even in this small way. "Tell me exactly what happened with David," I said, settling into the chair across from her. Sarah's story poured out in a rush of tears and broken sentences. David had become increasingly distant during their 3rd year of travel, spending hours on his phone and laptop, while claiming he was researching their next destinations. He had started making excuses to take trips alone, saying he needed to scout locations or handle practical arrangements for their travel group. Crystal had entered their lives as a travel blogger who specialized in luxury destinations for mature couples. She was beautiful, charming, and skilled at making wealthy, older men feel like adventurous, desirable partners, rather than aging tourists. David had fallen completely under her influence, convinced that she represented a chance to recapture his youth and live the kind of exciting life he had always dreamed about. I trusted him completely, Sarah sobbed. When he said we needed to sell the RV and travel lighter, I believed him. When he said he was transferring money to new accounts for better exchange rates, I signed whatever papers he put in front of me. I never imagined he was planning to leave me stranded in a foreign country. The abandonment had happened exactly as Derek described. David left for what he claimed was a routine errand and simply never came back to their motel. Sarah waited for 2 days before calling the police, who informed her that no crime had been committed, since David had every legal right to leave and take their jointly owned assets with him. I called and called his phone, but it went straight to voicemail, Sarah continued. Finally, Crystal posted a photo on Instagram showing her and your father on a beach in Florida. The caption said something about new adventures with my favorite travel partner and used heart emojis. That was how I learned my marriage was over. As Sarah talked, I found myself studying her face and mannerisms, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus simple desperation. When she finished describing her ordeal, I asked the question that would determine how this conversation proceeded. Do you understand why I am not immediately offering to solve your problems? I asked quietly. Sarah was silent for a long moment, her hands twisted in her lap, as she considered her answer carefully. Because I did the same thing to you, she said finally. I abandoned you when you needed me most, and now I am experiencing exactly how that feels. And I prompted, sensing there was more she needed to acknowledge. And I was wrong. Sarah said, fresh tears starting to flow. I was selfish and cruel, and I convinced myself that we were teaching you independence, when really we were just making excuses for choosing our own happiness over our responsibility to you. She looked up at me with an expression of genuine anguish. I have thought about you every single day for 8 years, wondering if you were safe, if you had enough to eat, if you found somewhere to live. I wanted to call you so many times, but I was too ashamed and too afraid you would hang up on me. Why did you never try? I asked. Why was your shame more important than knowing whether your son was alive or dead? Because I knew that if I called and you told me you were struggling, I would have to choose between helping you and continuing our travels, Sarah admitted. And I was not ready to give up the life we had built. I convinced myself that you were probably doing fine and that it was better not to interfere with your independence. This admission hit harder than anything else she had said. Sarah had consciously chosen to remain ignorant about my welfare, because learning the truth might have created inconvenient obligations that interfered with her selfish pleasure. She had not simply made a mistake in judgment. She had deliberately avoided information that might have required her to behave like a responsible parent. I hate the person I became, Sarah continued. I hate that I was more concerned about protecting my own happiness than caring for my child. I hate that it took David abandoning me for me to understand what I put you through. And I hate that I am sitting here asking for help from someone I should have been supporting all along. Emma arrived home from her night shift while Sarah and I were still talking. She greeted Sarah politely but coolly, making it clear that she knew exactly who Sarah was and what she had done. Emma excused herself to shower and change clothes, leaving us to continue our conversation privately. She seems lovely, Sarah said after Emma left the room. You chose someone much better than you had for an example growing up. Over the next hour, I explained what my life had been like after they abandoned me. Living in my car, losing my job, struggling to find basic shelter and food, and slowly building a career through determination and the generous mentorship of someone who owed me nothing. Sarah listened without interrupting, her face growing more stricken as she understood the full extent of suffering her choices had caused. When I finished my story, Sarah was quiet for several minutes before speaking. I am not asking you to forgive me, she said carefully. I am not asking you to pretend that what I did was acceptable or that we can just pick up where we left off. I am asking if you might be willing to help me find a job and a place to live so I can start rebuilding my life the way you had to rebuild yours." I considered her request while studying her face for signs of manipulation or entitlement. What I saw instead was a broken woman who finally understood the consequences of her selfish choices and was prepared to do the hard work of earning redemption rather than simply expecting forgiveness. "You can stay in our guest room tonight," I said finally. "Tomorrow we will drive around town and I will show you which businesses are hiring. I will help you fill out applications and provide a reference if employers need one, but you will find your own apartment and support yourself from now on, just like I had to do when you left me homeless." Sarah nodded gratefully, fresh tears starting to flow again. "Thank you. I know I do not deserve your kindness, but I promise I will not take advantage of it." "This is not kindness," I corrected her. "This is me choosing to be the kind of person who helps people in crisis, even people who did not help me when I was in crisis. Do not confuse my values with approval of your past behavior." Emma returned to the living room and listened as I explained the arrangement I'd offered Sarah. Emma supported my decision while making it clear that this was a temporary solution designed to help Sarah get back on her feet rather than a reconciliation of our family relationship. "Quincy has built a beautiful life despite what you did to him," Emma told Sarah directly. "Do not mistake his willingness to help you as evidence that your abandonment was somehow acceptable or that it worked out for the best." Over the following weeks, Sarah proved that her remorse was genuine by working diligently to rebuild her life without expecting ongoing support from me. She found a job as a housekeeper at a local hotel, moved into a studio apartment near the bus line, and began the slow process of establishing financial independence for the first time in decades. Sarah never asked for money beyond the initial help with her security deposit. She never complained about the physical demands of housekeeping work or the significant reduction in her standard of living compared to her years of luxury travel. Most importantly, she never suggested that I owed her anything beyond basic human decency or that our relationship could simply return to normal without addressing years of abandonment and neglect. 6 months after Sarah appeared at our door, Emma and I were married in a small ceremony attended by her family, Austin and his wife, and several friends from work and school. Sarah was not invited, not out of cruelty, but because she had not yet earned the right to participate in milestone moments of my life. Trust and family bonds could not be restored simply because she was now experiencing consequences for her selfish choices. Sarah sent a card congratulating us on our marriage, along with a short note acknowledging that she understood why she had not been included in our celebration. She wrote that she was proud of the man I had become and grateful that I had found someone who appreciated my character and supported my goals. 1 year after her return, Sarah asked if we could meet for coffee to discuss our relationship going forward. She had been promoted to housekeeping supervisor at the hotel, moved to a nicer apartment, and was taking evening classes in business administration. More importantly, she had been attending counseling to understand the selfish patterns that had led to her abandonment of basic parental responsibilities. "I want you to know that I am not trying to earn my way back into your life," Sarah said during our coffee meeting. "I understand that trust has to be rebuilt slowly through consistent actions over time. I am asking if you would be willing to consider letting me be part of your life again, as someone who has learned from her mistakes, rather than someone who expects to be forgiven simply because time has passed." I told Sarah that I was willing to continue having occasional contact as long as she continued demonstrating genuine change through her actions rather than just her words. We were not a normal mother and son, and we might never be, but we could potentially be two adults who had learned important lessons about accountability and personal growth. Emma and I had our first child 2 years later, a daughter we named Grace. When Emma suggested we should consider allowing Sarah to meet her granddaughter, I realized that my anger had been replaced by something more complex but healthier. I was no longer the desperate young man sleeping in his car, and Sarah was no longer the selfish woman who prioritized her own pleasure over her basic responsibilities. The story of my parents' abandonment had taught me that some people will hurt you deeply, but their choices do not have to define your character or limit your potential for happiness. Austin had shown me that mentorship and support can come from unexpected sources when you demonstrate integrity and work ethic. Emma had taught me that healthy relationships are built on mutual respect and shared values, rather than obligation or convenience. Most importantly, my experience with homelessness and struggle had given me empathy for others facing difficult circumstances, while also teaching me that help should be offered to people who are genuinely trying to improve their situations, rather than those who expect others to solve problems they created through their own poor choices. My parents' decision to sell our house and pursue their selfish dreams had been intended to teach me independence, but it actually taught me something much more valuable. It taught me that real strength comes from maintaining your values and continuing to work toward your goals, even when the people who should support you choose to abandon you instead. Sarah never fully regained the relationship she had forfeited through her choices, but she did earn a place in our lives as someone who had learned from her mistakes and was committed to being a better person going forward. David never attempted to contact me again, presumably too ashamed of his behavior to face the son he had abandoned twice, first through neglect and later through his affair and abandonment of his wife. The house my parents sold to fund their adventure was eventually torn down and replaced with a modern subdivision. Sometimes I drive past that area and remember the scared young man who once stood in that driveway, watching his parents drive away without looking back. That young man could never have imagined the successful life-loving marriage and financial security that would grow from the seeds of his abandonment and struggle. As I watch my daughter Grace playing in the backyard of our home, I think about the lessons I want to teach her about family responsibility and the kind of person she should strive to become. She will never experience abandonment or wonder whether her parents love her enough to sacrifice for her welfare. But she will also learn that love is demonstrated through actions rather than words, and that the strongest people are those who help others while maintaining their own boundaries and values. The pain of being abandoned taught me to value loyalty. The struggle of homelessness taught me to appreciate stability. The kindness of mentors taught me to help others when I am able. And the experience of choosing forgiveness on my own terms taught me that redemption is possible for people who genuinely commit to change. But it must be earned rather than simply expected. What experiences in your own life have taught you the most important lessons about resilience and personal growth? Have you ever had to choose between holding on to anger and extending forgiveness to someone who hurt you deeply? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about how we can help others while still protecting ourselves from people who might take advantage of our generosity. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of this community where we can share our experiences and learn from each other. I hope that sharing my journey from abandonment to success might encourage others who are facing difficult circumstances to keep working toward their goals, even when support comes from unexpected sources, rather than the people who should be helping them. Please like this video if it resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming challenges and building meaningful lives. And share this with someone who might benefit from hearing about resilience and the power of choosing your own values, even when others disappoint you. Remember that your current circumstances do not determine your future potential, and that sometimes the people who hurt us most end up teaching us our greatest strengths.